And we are back for another week of LiucciCast after an exciting win here at home at Kyle Field against LSU.
These are a lot more fun, aren't they? These shows after these games.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun after a win. It's better to win.
I wish people could see our texts, and listen to our conversations on the field, at the bar, the group text with Swope, and it's just, it's so fun. Like so every time. I'll tell you what else is fun. Is getting this guy to join us today.
That's
your
right.
Old teammate.
We have an exciting guest today, one of the best receivers in Texas A&M history, Mr. Jeff Fuller. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I really appreciate you guys having me, especially when it's such an exciting moment.
Yeah,
Very excited to have you.
Yeah, we are. And credit Sean with this great idea because, you and I talked this summer, and it was the first time I'd seen you in a while, and it just brought back good memories of not only you on the field, but just, we were just joking about all those interviews we used to do way back in the day, and it was still, it feels like, doesn't feel like that long ago, but it's like the middle of this whole thing, right?
Right.
And Jeff, I guess you were 1 year in the SEC, and you got done the year prior. First, let's just start by what's it like for you now, having played against all those Big 12 teams, and you're one of these guys that when you watch, say a rivalry like A&M SMU, what the hell? LSU, which this was the 14th time they played because Jeff's last game, right, was against.
Yeah, we played against
the
Honey
year before.
Badger in the bowl game.
That was my junior year, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, your junior year. So to see A&M and LSU as conference rivals and Bama and all this, does it feel just a little different for you having played in a completely different conference?
Yeah, and it does. And I think a big part of it was me being there right at the end of it and then leaving, and then it was completely different when I came back and watched. But I think it's super cool, man. The Alabamas, playing against the Alabamas, playing against pretty much really all the SEC schools. It's interesting to see them get up every single week and compete because we all know the difference between the two conferences.
Yeah, and I do. It's funny. Wait, first and foremost, Sean, can I tell you? Jeff and I have a hilarious story that we were reliving this summer. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. So the last time before this summer we saw each other was I go to Toronto, Canada.
Oh, man. Me and Jeff have one in Toronto, too.
So this is probably a little more tame. But I go to Toronto, and I'm out with Johnny in Toronto, and we're going into this bar, club, whatever.
Right.
And on that, their main drag and everything, and we're walking up, and, of course, Johnny's with all the little Drake crew.
Yeah.
So we're walking up in, and I hear someone yell out, Johnny, so I don't think anything of it. Just keep walking. And then someone yells my name. I'm like, well, that's weird. And I turn and walking up, I'm like, that can't be who I think it is. And it's Jeff.
Yep.
I guess you were playing where at the time? You were there after a game, right?
So yeah, I think that was when I was playing. It was when I was playing in Calgary.
Calgary,
we played
that's right.
a game in Toronto, and one of the strange things that the CFL does when you play across the coast, you just stay the night after the game.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
that was a really cool experience.
We were like, it's a long way from Northgate.
That's right.
But hey, speaking of Northgate, it was insane Saturday night after that win, as you could imagine. Watching that game the other night and seeing that environment at Kyle Field, how electric it was, how cool was that for you to see? You'd been a part of it before, to be watching it on TV, and then also just Mike Elko right now and what you're seeing in year one under a new coaching staff.
Man, I thought it was super incredible. I was watching, I saw that we were kind of down, but for some reason, not for some reason, I knew that we were going to come back and win it. Just seeing, the banter before the game from the quarterback at LSU and them, being noised out. And I think it's super cool, man. And seeing Coach Elko come in, and I feel like at the beginning of the season, there wasn't as much excitement as, in the prior years with first going to the SEC and then stuff like that. But I felt like we took the first game against Notre Dame was kind of a tough loss.
Yeah.
But ever since then, and then we had a few games where I felt like we could have won by a little bit more. But since then, I feel like the momentum has been picking up, and they kind of have this mindset where they're just digging and grinding. And kind of, I feel like it's going to be really cool when they pop their heads up and find out where they are. I mean, really number one in the SEC right now, which is incredible.
Yeah. And Jeff, I got another quick question for you, man. When I walked on campus here in 2009, it's like I walked in and saw Jeff Fuller. Jeff Fuller looks like Megatron.
Yeah,
like a dominant force out there. Big guy, 6'4", 6'5", like stronger and bigger than the linebackers out there. So just talk to me about your journey from McKinney High School to becoming like a number one receiver in college, because I'm looking this season at our receiving core, and I'm looking for number one of these guys to emerge and to really become that guy. And you were really that guy at one
almost
point.
From day one.
Almost from day one, and you took that responsibility, and you were able to kind of, guide your way through that journey, figure out your way through that journey. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
As you guys know, I was a basketball guy. So having a basketball background, and really kind of funny growing up in the Bay Area, because, my dad was with the 49ers. I moved to Texas and saw those Friday night lights, and was like, man, I want to be a part of that.
That's right.
And I started playing football actually my freshman year, which
of high school. I didn't know that.
Yeah, which was kind of a different adjustment for the typical Texas football.
Right.
And I think at the beginning of my career, I just kind of had a big issue where I was running high, like kind of running higher. Mm-hmm. And then how Coach K had us on those lunges pretty tough.
Right. Right.
So the lunges kind of shifted me from being like vertical to more of like linear explosiveness. And I think the biggest thing is working on the releases. That's what really was a game changer, and just attacking the ball. And I feel like for these guys coming in, I think the biggest thing is just stay focused on your craft.
Yep.
It's wild to me as you're talking, Jeff. I literally, if someone goes back and watch, probably not on the screen, but I just did this with my head, and I was just thinking about it. There was a team with Ryan Tannehill and Johnny Manziel in the quarterback room, and Jeff Fuller, Ryan Swope, and Mike Evans in the receiver room. I didn't think about that till just now. We always know that, Johnny was redshirting with Tanny. I'll go ahead.
To Jeff's point real quick, pretty much your answer to that question of how to become the guy and how to lead that transition into becoming the guy is the devil is in the details. The small stuff matters. Staying low. Go ahead.
I remember one of the biggest things Sherman would say was like, you're either on the boat or off the boat. And me coming in and him and like seeing how intense he was with some of the veterans that like the Javorskis and the Goodsons, I was on the boat.
Yeah.
So the great players are just great at normal stuff.
And I bought into everything. And I think as far as it being like a pro star, it wasn't until probably like year 3 to where I completely understood what everybody was doing and like the timing of a 3-step or a 5-step or a 7-step drop. All those things were like just kind of got developed over time because, kind of just you completely buy in. And I feel like it helped too whenever you are learning new offenses. When I watch games and I watch offenses, I know like I might not know the name of what they call it, but I know the play.
Right? Yeah. And I bet you can watch it with a pretty critical eye and know like what a young, still developing passing game looks like versus an experienced kind of well-oiled machine. Like when you look at Jackson Dart and Trey Harris at Ole Miss versus, I think the other night people don't realize like Nussmeier, everybody talks about that second half he had. This is his first year to start. Mm-hmm. He's never started in an environment like that. Jeff, wow. So I brought up that part about that roster and that group. Take us through, what were your first impressions of Mike Evans when he came in? You talk about basketball player, similar background to you. He was really raw, didn't start football till late. What were your first impressions?
We knew Mike was. I knew Mike was special from the beginning.
Really?
Like they had this I mean, he came in and he was definitely a physical presence. But as soon as there was any type of, minus routes on air or drills or any of that, as soon as there was any type of game time situation, the stuff that he was doing was undeniable. There was a period, Sean, I don't know if you remember the period that they used to have at the end of practice.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Mike was picking people up with one hand and dropping them. And it was to me, it was immediate. I knew for sure that he was going to be somebody special. And I think with the recruiting that they were doing then, a lot of guys were like that. I remember Swope coming in and being just a physical presence. We all were trying to compare him to Wes Welker, and he was really 6'1", 220.
Yeah.
Yep, that ain't no Wes Welker.
I still remember Swope's highlights in high school at running back.
Yeah, he was really
the
good.
dude, to this day, he walks in, you realize how big he is for being a receiver that could do some of the things he could do were incredible. One thing I think, Sean, I think I know the answer to this. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. We're playing Texas this year for the first time since the last game. Jeff Fuller scored the last touchdown against the Texas Longhorns, scored by an Aggie. Am I right?
I think so.
Under 2 minutes left, Tannehill hits you. You break a tackle near the goal line, score, go up. Sean's defense can't hold it.
I don't want to. I'm not going to speak on what.
I'm definitely paying for dinner now. After
Jeff
that
knows
one.
exactly what I'm thinking about, but I ain't going to speak on it.
So, but no, Jeff, try to guess the number of touchdowns scored by Jeff Fuller against the Horns, because I'm thinking in my head of what it might be.
There wasn't one year that I didn't score against Texas, including my freshman year.
Yep. Was your freshman year the 80-yarder on the first play of the game, or was that your sophomore?
That was my sophomore year.
Okay. So 80 yards. So you had 4 touchdowns in 4 years, or was it 5?
7.
I was going to guess 7 or 8.
You had 3 in one game. That's
I was
right.
Guess 7 or 8.
That's right.
Yeah,
You had 3. Did you have 3 the year you started the game with the touchdown?
Yeah, that was the game. Yeah, where I almost got caught.
Yeah, but that was as loud as people talk about that Johnny to Mike touchdown against Bama to open the Texas game.
That's big time.
With an 80-yard TD. That was roof. Yeah. The place, the lid blew off of that place that night.
That's right.
But yeah, 7 touchdowns against Texas in 4 years. That's insane.
Is there a number? I don't know for sure.
It's at least. Yeah, I can think of all those in my head, but
that's probably right.
What does it mean to you to see that rivalry coming back, and also to kind of be watching as these two teams start to each week look more and more like on a collision course where there's really going to be something at stake?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, I think it's super exciting. And there's not a bigger stage. Are they playing on Thanksgiving? Is it Thanksgiving yet?
Saturday. They're doing a Saturday night.
After, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a bigger stage. And I remember they did such a good job of just the pre-games. I remember there was one year where we went and stayed at some Hyatt resort, and it wasn't over the top or anything, but it was just I just remember every time before that Texas game, I remember the importance, and I remember how well A&M did with letting us understand the tradition and the history of the game.
Yeah.
And it is pretty cool to see, us kind of jump in the rankings. When we beat LSU, I was hoping that we'd come up to the 10th spot. And I'm watching Texas kind of, drift around that 5-6 spot, and it's super exciting. And for these guys, we just need to beat them.
Right.
We were in the SEC first, and they're making their adjustments and they're moving, and the way that I'm looking at the way that I feel about it, and the way I'm looking at it, I think we have dogs that are kind of ready to go and attack when it comes to them. I think we got them this year. I think we'll do all right.
I think we definitely got the dogs for him, man. We definitely have the players to match up to anybody in the country, and that's kind of something I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, man. Like, we're playing teams like LSU, and we're saying this guy's never been touched the whole season, and the receivers are so good, and we got guys too. You know, we got great DBs, great linebackers, great D-line. They all showed up this weekend.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that in the defense and review, but you've been saying that all year. You said, like, look, there's no reason they can't match up with whoever
6 touchdowns versus Texas.
Golly.
6 touchdowns.
That's ridiculous.
We got the fact checker.
That's 6 touchdowns against Texas. That's got to be a record for a receiver. Because Mike, that's as impressive a stat as I've seen outside. The other one that always stands out to me is Mike Evans the year after you left against Bama and Auburn. I think he went for like 280 plus in each of those games and like 5 touchdowns against. And Auburn that year played for the national title. That's not like bad Auburn. That's great Auburn.
Right.
That 6 touchdowns against Texas. I haven't looked it up. They're probably looking it up right now, but that's got to be a record for an A&M receiver because for all those years before, Texas A&M didn't throw the football a whole lot.
Yeah.
Up until about 5 years before you got here, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff started it all with the big play receivers, man.
Well, and
of the new age.
Is there a guy or two, Jeff, that you really enjoy watching on this A&M team?
I'm enjoying watching the young quarterback, man.
Yeah, Marcel.
Marcel is super exciting. But I'm hearing he comes from like a coaching background, and I'm super excited about him. And our defense. They seem like they're physical. I keep seeing like different stuff on the internet, on their Instagrams and stuff. Like they seem like they're ready to go. And honestly, on any good team that I've ever been on, is the defense were really secretly carrying everybody. You know?
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, what do you like when I look? This is what got me this week, and I know Jeff, you know, the guy sitting next to me is all about this life, but like you said earlier, LSU's quarterback was talking about Kyle Field. Their defensive end laughed at the stat where it said Trey Zune hadn't given up a sack this year, and he quote tweeted it and laughed about it. And you've got the Aggie lineman coming in talking about Twitter fingers will get your hands broke, you know, whatever it was. And then I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the pregame dust up with the Aggie D line and the LSU O line and linebacker? Like, I love that because Jeff, you guys played one game against LSU. You played 2 against LSU. And A&M was like 0-7 coming in the SEC against these guys. And now for the last 8 seasons, it's been the home teams won it.
Right.
And I just like that Texas A&M went out there Saturday night, and it's the 2nd time in a row at home, really the 3rd time in a row at home, where Texas A&M football was just way more physical, and they just imposed their will on LSU. And I love seeing the Aggies go against one of these SEC blue bloods and just hit them in the mouth.
That's right. I mean, anytime we can do that, anytime we can go beat up on Auburn, we can beat up on Alabama, we can beat up on LSU, like any of these historically great SEC teams, even that win in Florida, I ain't mad about that either.
Yep.
Georgia, you know, any of these teams, it's like just to get that check off the box, that, you know, check that box and get that off the list, it's always exciting.
Right.
Yeah. There's something different about beating Kentucky or even an Ole Miss, who's been really good these last few years, though, than beating LSU, Florida, teams like that. Who was that team when you played outside of Texas, Jeff, in the Big 12, that you just flat out either didn't like or you just wanted to really elevate when you guys played them?
You know, strangely, those K-State games.
Really?
Were like the K-State away games and just kind of give you that like East Coast, like the more northern feeling. I don't know what it was, but went to that environment in the middle of nowhere where you feel like there's nothing. And then all of a sudden they have their stadium rocking. It's not as big, but it's like small and loud. You know, kind of like almost so much like a basketball game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Starkville a little bit.
You go up there in the cold, man, it's like playing against the White Walkers up there.
Well,
they're hitting hard and it's cold and they don't care.
There was one year where it did not go good. I remember that.
I remember that too.
And then like a week later is when y'all went and beat Tech for the first time in a while, right?
Yeah.
Y'all went and destroyed them.
Those were fun games too.
Tech.
I would say Oklahoma State. Oklahoma
Really?
State was always a fun game. Like it was a good rivalry. For some reason, Sherman had this thing with Gundy, whatever. But
Yeah.
as far as playing in that environment, because like the stands are so close to the field.
Yeah.
Right behind us.
So it's like it was just a fun, and the turf was good. It was just a fun environment. Going from now, I know that turf was not as good, but going from playing in the grass and like practicing in grass every week, and then going to Oklahoma State where the stands are close and it's turf and you're running faster was always like a cool experience, you know.
Do you remember any? I know Sean and I have talked about it because he played against him and tackled him and stuff. But do you remember anything about Colin Klein back? I guess that would have been the 2011 game. Do you remember anything about him, quarterback? And that was kind of him and Tannehill going back and forth. I felt like that whole game.
Klein, was that the guy who came from playing baseball?
No.
Colin Klein, the quarterback
at K-State in that game. Who?
Oh, I don't remember that. Him
Yeah.
You know, Jeff's offensive.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know if Klein wasn't a star at that point. It was the year after, obviously, when he was a Heisman finalist. He I guess came out of nowhere. But anyway.
He was tough.
Yeah. How hard was he to tackle?
Pretty hard to tackle, man.
What was it about him, though? Is he so big or just?
Not that big. I mean, he's big. He's tall, but he wasn't that big. He's not like he's as big as the Belldozer.
Was he one of those guys that just you couldn't get quite a clean hit on? Like, what made him so tough?
All right, man, straight, man. It's like one of those boxers that doesn't care if he gets punched in the nose and punched in the chin and punched in the forehead and just keeps coming. Yeah, you're not knocking him out. That type of thing,
Yeah. Well, Jeff, this has been fun, man. We need to catch up more often. Anytime you want to come into College Station, you know where home's at over here. You can come join us anytime.
Definitely. Thanks for coming on, Jeff.
For sure. And thank you guys for having me.
All right, buddy. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. And we're back again with our second special guest for this episode. We have Isabella Radovan back here with us. She's a former TexAgs employee, I believe, right?
No, Billy actually never hired me, so I never got to work. I'm just kidding.
Thanks,
I couldn't
Sean.
even try to work for TexAgs.
But now she's doing some sideline reporting and a lot of high school stuff. So, we brought her in to get her a good perspective on some of the upcoming recruits headed here to A&M and talk some ball.
And a friend of ours, Aggie, San Antonio Spurs.
Friend of the program.
You worked with them for how long?
Probably about a year, and then I worked for a station in San Antonio. Then I've done contract work. I've kind of done like a little bit of everything. I didn't work for TexAgs, but when I was at A&M, I could have. I probably should have done that. I worked for KBTX. I did a news internship, but like I knew I always wanted to work in sports, and so but KBTX didn't have it open, so they had a news spot, and I went on my first day at work there, and they sent me to a capital murder trial. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
After that, I was like, I'm supposed to be in sports. That's what I've always wanted to do. And yeah, so I've done a lot of different things. I now work with Valley Sports Southwest, which is now FanDuel. We're kind of going through a brand name change, but yeah, covering football right now. I've done.
And you're doing a lot
for,
of high school stuff.
Yeah, they have me doing different games like Travis, Westlake, DeSoto, all the kind of big names in Texas high school football.
Yeah, you were telling me about a running back from DeSoto?
Yeah.
Tiger. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I covered him a couple weeks ago at the Alamo Dome for DeSoto. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was fun to watch him just because I already knew that he was coming to A&M. So getting to see like a future Aggie is always really fun. But he's a stud of a player. Coach Mathis, too, with DeSoto, like he just raved about him. Just saying on the field, obviously we know how great he is. He's about 6 feet, 200 pounds. Like he just bulldozes through these guys, and he made it look easy. I mean, I think at the end of the game, it was like 40 points. I mean, it was a slaughter. But the cool thing about him, too, just his personality, like obviously A&M's about culture and getting these guys on this team that are more than just a football player. But he's hilarious, has a great personality. He's great in the classroom, and he's really taken those running backs underneath his wing to kind of, mold them into future hymns if possible.
Yeah.
But he really spends a lot of time with them. But Coach Mathis raved about him, just saying his personality's great.
And that perspective is cool for me to get because I don't keep up with this recruiting stuff these days. I mean, it's been years and years since I got recruited here, so that's probably the last time I looked at all that stuff. But yeah.
Well, speaking of him, before we go to that, I want to say how important, so you're familiar, you know Coach Mathis really well, you cover that program. There is so much talent there, Sean, just like there was when you were here.
Yeah.
Cyrus Gray, Von Miller,
Man.
Tony Jared, we were just talking about Garrick Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And on the team now, you got Tony coaching. You've got Armaje Reed Adams, who detoured to Kansas first and is now here, and Shamar Turner.
Oh, Turner?
Yeah, so already a DeSoto presence. You've got Tiger coming in, and you know this as well as maybe some of our diehard recruiting people know this. There is so much talent like in the wings right now at that high school that it's like hard to even fathom. Like you could see if they get that thing, if Mike Elko and company get that thing rolling, you could see it quickly get to like it used to be where there were like 4 or 5 guys from DeSoto on one A&M team.
And I think it's a lot about the kind of guys we get, right? Because we try just to go after all the top number ones at every position and do that. But I think it's the type of guys that we're getting and the type of kind of makeup that Elko is looking for.
Yeah.
I think we'll come out with a good result.
You know what I love about the other night, right? You've got an O-lineman from Kansas. You know, you've got an O-lineman from Westlake, a freshman. You've got a transfer O-lineman from Utah. You've got 2 tackles that came through your program. One was highly regarded, one wasn't. Tackle from Colorado who's like an Aggie legacy. You could go all across this field and all these things. But like I'm looking at defense and what Elko's done, and we've talked about this in the portal. Nick Scorton was this high-profile portal. You know, you've got the Big Ten sack leader.
And we hit.
And you hit. Then you've also got the MAC sack leader who was getting some real pressure the other night.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Cassius Howell, by the way.
Yeah.
He looks really like comfortable dropping in coverage too.
Yeah.
He's so long. So you've got the Big Ten sack leader, the MAC sack leader. You've got one starting corner from Bama that was a 5-star. You've got another corner that went from Houston High School to Incarnate Word to UAB to A&M that gets 2 interceptions in BJ Mays. It's what you talk about, right? You've always said you don't want all these guys whose path was like, you're the greatest, you're the greatest, you're the greatest, here you are.
Thank you. You need some guys with some bumps and bruises, some scars along the way, some no's, some failures, some, have been through a little bit of, pressure in their time, right?
Yeah.
If you never get that moment where it's almost like, this is what I think about, this is what I kind of compare that to. These young basketball kids who, they're all going to these neighborhood high schools, right? Mm-hmm. And then if they're good, by their junior year, they transfer to some academy and then it's easy breezing. We're eating the best meals. We're traveling, playing teams. We're blowing out, right? They're never in those moments where they're down by 20 and they got to pull their team back, right?
Yeah.
So they don't get that experience of that, right? So I think the group of guys that we have now, they've built that callus in football, right? They've been able to go through their ups and downs and get beat at UAB or wherever it was, or get beat at Alabama and learn from that. And now we got not a finished product, but something that's close.
Yeah. What were your thoughts coming back? I know you were here for what? Notre Dame?
No, I was here for Missouri.
Missouri,
yeah, so not that long ago. Which that one was
top
great.
10. We might need you back in a few weeks. Texas. What were your thoughts about just the atmosphere the other night, the game, all of it? The comeback, that was shocking.
I think it was definitely one of the best games to go to. It's funny because this is the first season I've actually been able to come like as a fan. I'm normally working these games or working on Saturdays. So it's been really fun for this year to just come in and like go to a game and watch it. But I think it was definitely one of my favorite games. Even when I think about games I went to in college, this is my favorite because this team is so different than what it was when I was here, about even 2 years ago. Like it's a blackout game. That game, we knew that we had to get a win. There was just so much on the line with it. And just the atmosphere was electric. I mean, you could just tell when you walked in, like everyone just, like you could just feel it. It was just a feeling in the air. I think at halftime, everyone felt a little defeated.
Uneasy,
And that was kind of like, as Aggies, we're, diehard fans for our team. And I think at halftime, people were kind of going back into that mentality of like, oh, we're not going to do it. We're not going to win. That kind of Debbie Downer vibe.
It's happened so many times.
Yeah.
To us, right?
So it was like, oh, here we go again. It's like too good to be true, which we shouldn't even think like that. But that is what, Aggie fans are accustomed to.
Well,
and it was a game changer in that third quarter.
This is what I love about Sean and Hunter and these guys. They don't, like, I'm over here trying to say, well, but they're like, no, because they played it. And so they go, no, I'm tired of seeing us lose these type of games. And you said that after Notre Dame, and I was sitting here going, well, like I get it, but it is literally the first game under a new coach. But Sean's sitting here going, no, but I watched that game and I know we could have won it because I saw how it went. And you wanted to get there, and they've gotten there. And it's crazy to me to think in the last 2 games that you just mentioned, A&M has outscored those teams. I think, I'm just coming up in the top of my head, I think 79 to 33, Missouri and LSU. And I'm with you. It felt like all day A&M was winning that game. Like the whole build-up, walking around before the game, down there on the field before the game, the crowd filing in. Credit LSU for coming out the way they did. But damn, Sean, the mental, I guess, and physical adjustments made, and we're going to talk about Marcel Reed in a minute, but I want to talk to you. We'll go more in depth, but defensively, the way they just amped it up and really it gets underscored a little bit because of how good Marcel was, how brilliant he was, but that defense took the game over, and so did the running game.
I felt like the defense was money, especially in the second half. Beyond a couple of long passes that we let go and kind of lapses in our coverage that we let get by us, we played really good, man. We played really good in the run game. I haven't seen the third down numbers yet, but I'm sure we played pretty good on third down. These guys are the real deal. And after Missouri, I wouldn't have said that. Right? So after Missouri, I was like,
you could tell they weren't that good of a team.
Yeah, but I thought Missouri was overrated the whole time, right? So after Missouri, I wouldn't have said that, even though it was a top 10 win. But this was a real top 10 win. So I believe in us, and I just hope that we don't rest on our laurels and get comfortable here going up against South Carolina next week and Auburn the week after. We need to bulldoze these. If we're better than these guys, we need to bulldoze these guys. We need to treat them like what I talked about at the beginning of the season, kill the ant with a sledgehammer. We don't play around with these teams that may be at a level below us or 2 levels below us, because when you play with your food, it might, eat you.
Well, and I think, I'll tell you this, if they lost to South Carolina, it's not going to be because they underestimate them, because all you have to do is watch that tape of them this year. Those guys should have beaten LSU. Their quarterback got hurt in the second quarter. He was creasing them, kind of like Marcel did. They had a pick 6 called back that would have put them up like 10 or 13 with 5 minutes left.
Freak athletes, a lot of high-round NFL guys in their front. I think the best defensive line they'll face this year. And at night in South Carolina, after a bye week, following a really emotional win here, better bring our stuff with us.
It sets up where half the country is going to pick South Carolina to win, and I kind of like that for these guys. I kind of like it for them because, like you said, they're not going to get the opportunity to kind of think they're the hunted and no longer the hunter.
And we're not. By the way, just so we can get this out here to the world, we are not the hunted right now. We are not like the top dog that everybody's reaching for and all that. We're still on our march. We're still on the way. We're still chasing, right? We're still trying to get up there. We got to make the playoffs, win a couple games in the playoffs, and kind of make a deep run here, to become one of those type of teams.
Look at the rushing yards.
I think being an underdog, though, that's kind of what's made this team so successful. There was not that flashiness. That is not Coach Elko, and that's not what we've seen in past years at A&M. And I think it's kind of what's making this team. It's the driving force behind it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it started off with Coach Sumlin and all that flash and the swag copter and Cliff and John, and they needed that. This program needed that. He was a part. He saw it happen. Like, it was the perfect timing for that as A&M went into the SEC. We've talked a million times, Sean, about when you guys went to SEC Media Days, and right?
That was SEC Media Days was crazy. The way they talked to us like, hey, are y'all ready to come in here and get your faces beat in every week? Or are you ready to come in here and just, be our doormat and be, another Vanderbilt, another one of those teams that we just don't think much of, going into each and every season. So I was offended. And I think I kind of reacted like I was offended. And it was a good thing because our team saw our leaders take on those questions. They saw me and Swope and Luke Joker go up there and take on those questions. And we didn't bow to it, right? We didn't say like, oh yeah, we're just coming in here trying to just, play some ball and just get along. No, we're coming in here trying to beat everybody and win the league our first year. So it turned out good for us.
It was wild, and a wild turnaround because you were 6-6 in the Big 12 and then come out and take that league by storm.
They had 55 yards. I'm sorry to cut you off. They had 55 yards rushing.
Yeah.
No, they had 55 yards gained.
And 31 lost. So they had
finished
24
with
yards.
24 yards rushing.
Goodness gracious.
So A&M outran them 242-24.
You can't run if that happens to you in the run game, you'll never win a game.
But here's what's beautiful about it. That's what A&M did to Florida. They did it to Missouri. They did it to LSU, and they did it to. They didn't do it to Mississippi State because Mississippi State had 2 30-plus yard runs in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they did it. They did it for the rest of the game. But every other Arkansas's got a damn good running game. They shut that off. I think Arkansas ran for 100 even. That was with a 25-yard fake punt.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this defense, Sean, and we'll talk about it a lot in a minute, but it gets better and better. But the 242 stands out also. And I listened to all these LSU people this week, and they're like, oh, it was just Marcel, and we weren't ready to defend it. I go, man, Moss and Owens is hurt. Moss and Amari, who we got to talk about, they had 100 yards rushing at halftime.
Yes.
It wasn't the run game. It was they couldn't do it in the passing game. Talk about that turnaround offensively, and when 10 went on the field, and to score on the first play of the game.
I mean, you could feel, I know a lot of people going to this game didn't want to talk about how environment comes into it because you could say Death Valley has a great, loud stadium, but it was probably the loudest time I've ever been in Kyle Field. I mean, you could see a huge significant difference with the fan base there. I mean, with the third largest fan base was there at Kyle Field, I think. Yeah. I mean, when Marcel comes on, you can even tell with that team that's a different dynamic. It's a different environment. And if you're watching on TV, if you're at Kyle Field, you see it and you can feel it. It's a different vibe. It's a little bit more energetic. I think he connects so well with those receivers. Not saying that they don't have respect for Connor, but I see a difference when he comes out there. And the fans love it. He's energetic. He has that like star quality. And that's what you want in your quarterback.
And I agree. I mean, I think going into that third quarter, we were all kind of like on the edges of our seat, especially where I was. And we were all on the edges of our seat thinking, when's he going to take him out? Like, when is he going to make a change?
And I liked bringing Connor back out, but you knew you were up against it. If they'd have come out and scored right away and you're down 24, like it was high risk, but I liked, hey, this is our starting quarterback. We're going, he's not giving the ball like, wasn't like Notre Dame, but you're like, you got to calm down. You got to talk to Coach Klein. I'm sure he talked with Coach Elko. You got to look at everything that was going on. Now let's get it together. And when those first 2 drives, I immediately saw him talking to him. You knew what was happening. I mean, maybe he could have done it a drive earlier, but he gave him 2 drives out of the third. Your defense held up, and BJ Mays came up with the play of the game. They showed man, dropped into zone. I want to talk to you about that whole concept.
That might have been man all the way. I thought it was man all the way.
Elko, I asked him, it was zone. So and that's the thing. Maybe they did that good job of disguising.
Well, it looks like yo-yo. Like it looks like somebody like they're running these type of releases, twisting releases, switch releases.
Yeah, and then they yo-yo back.
Yeah, you yo-yo. I mean, I say, I'm pressing this guy. Yeah. You're playing off coverage out there on the outside receiver. If my guy goes outside and up the field, you're taking him because you're standing there already, and I'm going to switch and take your guy. But I mean, now that you say that, it also could have been a zone where he just banged him and buzzed to the flat.
And then you saw that second one where he definitely did that.
Yep.
And I think the point of it was
they were standing at 3, man. That was.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So,
one thing I want to say real quick. I just want to talk about the masterclass in like relationship-based coaching that Elko is putting on here when it comes to the quarterback situation and the way that he's handled it, right? Most coaches fail in this situation, people. Most coaches cannot do this. They're not good at this. They can't handle that. They don't know how to, as we can, we have a big, bright example here at our own school when we had Kyle Lowland and Kyler Murray on the same team, right? For a coach to handle having 2 good quarterbacks on the same team and being able to start one, bench one, start the other one, bench one, not losing your team in the process of all of it. And just the way that he did it, I agree with it. I 100% agree with his philosophy on it. Start your starter. Connor wins coming out of the spring or whatever, start Connor. Boom, he's playing, he's not playing well, okay, he gets hurt. Your backup comes in, wins a few games. Just because your backup looks great in those 3 games, don't forget that he's your backup.
Yeah.
That other guy earned a starting spot. You shouldn't lose a starting spot on an injury that way, right? So he puts Connor back in, right? Connor plays well against Missouri, and we move on throughout the season, and we get to this game, and Connor
he doesn't lose Marcel.
lose Marcel mentally. Sticks, so he's talking to Marcel, talking to Connor about this whole situation. They both are comfortable with what's going on.
You saw that post-game speech after Missouri. I thought that was really important. Like he raved about Marcel.
Yes.
Well, I think it's credit to Marcel too. He's so young and he's handling that with so much, dignity and respect. But credit to Coach Elko. I'm not trying to stir the pot here, but you saw with that Texas-Georgia game with Sark pulling his quarterbacks, that yo-yo effect.
Different situation, right?
Different situation. But I think the way Elko handled it was just such a class act all the way through. And as a viewer, you can see the dynamic and why he did it, and it made sense.
Yes.
And he's done such a great job with that. And culture's been that driving factor for this team, and it really shows in every single phase of the game.
The culture is big, and it is so you can see it here. And there's so many examples of it, but none more so than what you're talking about. And look, I want to say this because we're going to talk about Marcel right now, but Connor Wigman handled that exactly how I want to see a quarterback handle that. He was visibly disappointed, but it wasn't in a me first way. It was in a competitive way. Like, yeah, I'm not happy, but you're the coach. And I, you could almost see that, like, he got it.
Connor's a man at the end of the day. You see the respect in him and the way that he kind of carries this game and carries himself, and even the way he reacted when Marcel was out there balling. When Marcel was out there making plays.
And he was one of the first guys, and they're talking about the game.
It's a cool dynamic between them when you watch it.
You can see his character.
No selfish, no me first. They're both very supportive of each other when they're out making those big plays.
And it's hard to be that way in intense competition. This is the highest level of college football that it gets. Both of these guys want to be the starter. Both of these guys want to be the one out there making plays, and everybody's screaming for
It's not like linebacker where y'all can both play, or one guy you can play 2 series, the other guy can play 1. It's just it doesn't work.
There can only be one, and we ain't swapping in and out. So,
but they did the other night, not in and out, but they made
not
the
in
swap.
And out. You make a change, and that's what I'm saying. Elko handled this perfectly. He never tried that crap. He never did that. We're going to go with 2 quarterbacks, see who plays better, and that'll never work on a football team ever. What Elko did is, I'm starting Wigman. We're rolling with hey team, we're rolling with Wigman. Okay, Wigman plays bad. Whatever happens, hey team, I'm making a change. We're rolling with Marcel. And I'm not swapping them in and out. This is not
And he set the precedent that if he has to do it again, he can. He can do it again because he set the precedent. Like, hey, you're the starting quarterback. You got to play at a high level. We need you to play at a high level. The goal is to win this game this week. And like you said, the way he's dealt with it,
it's been great.
He's got 2. But let's talk about Marcel, Sean, as a linebacker. How difficult is it to stop what he was doing and just kind of the feel for how he had it, and then also just how it's not just the speed. I almost feel like he's like a point guard out there, like a basketball player, the way he's
cerebral. He's a thinker out there, and you can tell that like he has his way of doing this, right? Like when I played linebacker, like I know I don't play linebacker like, what's the guy from Brian Cushing?
Yeah.
Or I don't play linebacker like, one of those big, head downhill type of linebackers, right? I have my way of doing this, and it's gonna be it's successful, right? Marcel has his way of doing it. He knows in his mind. If I drop back, I make my read. I might get to my second read, but I mean, if they're not open, I'm out of here, buddy. I'm not gonna even play with you. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll take 8 yards. I'll take 7 yards. I'll take 5 yards on a run on an early down on a first and second down, and that is paying dividends for us, right? In my opinion, first down is the most important down in football, right?
Yeah.
If you can create second and short and third and short, you're avoiding a lot of the very bad situations that you can get into with some of these defensive coordinators and with some of these top-level defensive players, right? So I love his kind of off-play ability, like off-book ability, the way that he can just kind of get off the script and go do his thing out there. It's big time. In college football especially because everyone's not elite, man. It's like, if you're trying to do that in the NFL, you better be the guy. You better be Lamar Jackson out here faster than everybody else or else. You know what I'm saying? But in college, it's not like that. Everybody isn't elite all around here. So you make one guy miss and you've got 30 yards of grass in front of you. I mean, if you're a quarterback and you can make it happen, go out there and make it happen.
And put so much pressure on the defense. You just saw LSU, and then all of a sudden, those running backs are just eating up yards. Le'Veon Moss, I was really happy for. playing against his hometown team in Baton Rouge. He had a huge game. If you look at it, he had 125 total yards there. He had a huge catch while they were scoring. He had 2 big runs. He's so good inside the 5. But the guy I want you to talk about, you guys to speak about, is Amari Daniels.
Yeah.
Like, I always talk about Regis. He's my guy on defense. I just feel like he's the unsung hero. Like, every week gets it done, creates stuff for others. Nobody talked about Amari Daniels heading into this season. Everyone, and rightfully so upset when Reuben Owens got hurt. Devastating injury, whatever. And I said, look, they've got other backs. I know Reuben's special. He is. But Amari Daniels, people are sleeping on him. He showed it in spurts last year. He had 600 yards rushing last year. But last night, I'm not even looking at stats in other games. This was his best game as an Aggie. When you look at what he did, 12 carries, 91 yards.
He comes in with energy, punches these guys, man, and he blocks. And he makes the dirty, nasty plays that you need for a running back to make. Comes in with energy, brings us a different type of guy back there in the backfield, different type of personality in the backfield.
Physicality's been there too, and I think A&M's missed that a lot of the time, where we needed a little bit of that edge, like you saw before the game with the guys kind of getting into it. Like, that is what this team needs. That's the energy that you have to have on those big games if you want to make it to like an SEC championship game. Like, and that's what they've done. And I think there's certain players like Daniels that have a little chip on their shoulder, and that's like Torian York. Like, you have that chip, and that just drives you. It drives you for success to kind of always prove yourself. And I mean, if you just come in and you're just that guy, I mean, I think everyone performs a little bit better with that chip sometimes.
Both of our backs have that edge.
They do. They finish. They want it. They fight for you. I think they really pick up like just the overall level that everyone's playing at. And then I think, obviously, and you mix in Marcel.
And it's up another notch. I mean, these guys, man.
Does Amari remind you at all of, there's somebody, he was at the game the other night, and I said, that's a good comparison. Same thing, too. 5-star back. Who's out there starting games?
Who?
Ben Molina.
Oh, Molina? Yeah, I mean, he actually does.
Just the whole idea of it, right?
Yeah, he actually does remind me a lot of Ben Molina. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Short.
He's a little more lean than Ben Molina was. It took Ben some time to get himself together. Yeah.
Really muscular.
Yeah. Right, but they have the same play style. They have the same mentality at running back. I mean, they're not going around you, so they're either gonna run away from you or run through you. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. And
there's depth on that team. We have that, and that's great. And it's a good thing for us finally to be like, okay, if that doesn't work, we have that weapon too, and we can get it done with it.
Well, we talked about the depth on the O-line. Just running
back room too.
7-8 running back room. The defensive line is a whole nother story. Like, Alabama and Georgia wish they had that depth right now, which is crazy. I heard Scott Van Pelt and Stanford Steve talking about that the other day, and it's like Stanford Steve goes around game day, every week, and I was with him at practice on that Thursday before Notre Dame, and Elko was like feeling really good about the D-line, and he told me that day, he said, dude, like, that's the first coach in college football this whole offseason that I talked to that felt good about his depth on the D-line because of the transfer portal, because of the money being thrown around, backup D-linemen. Like, you don't think there's plenty of teams that want Bama's backup D-linemen right now that are like freshmen, and so it's hard to do that. There's also depth in that secondary, and you and I are going to talk about that later, but
linebacker too.
I thought this was the back seven. I thought this was their best game because of who they played against, because of Nussmeier, the receivers.
The linebackers really stepped up this week again, and it's like, I've been waiting on them to play like this all season so that I can talk good about them and just raise my throw down my praises on them. But they're playing well, man. I'm happy to see York waking up and shooting his gaps and playing with confidence and being that guy who we expected him to be coming into the season. Happy to see Scooby Williams out there running around and being athletic,
he had
intelligent, showing his awareness.
Quietly one of the biggest plays in that game, too, that hit over the middle.
He makes smart plays, man, and he knows, like, what's going on the field. I like his awareness and how it's gotten better. I can see it getting better throughout the season. And like you said, even talking about 18 out there, man, he led the So 18 is a special case on our team because he's unselfish. He's taking a role that you wouldn't expect a player of his caliber to take on our team, but he's doing it for the greater good, for the good of the guys around him, right? That's special. That's something that you don't see a lot of top-level athletes doing or even thinking that way, right? And then we rounding it out with 15. I know these guys are kind of like edge, D-ends, outside linebacker, whatever, but 15 to be a young sophomore out there, the way he's playing, he's one of those backups a lot of other teams might want to have.
You know what else I like? And this is going to sound, these little things like the black uniforms and Elko thinking outside the box, what the social media, and he's doing it for the players and he's doing it for recruiting. And you know this, you've been around here. That is not an easy push past. At this place, at Texas A&M, and this is why I say, like, look, Tennessee is bright orange and white, and they're doing blackout uniforms this week. If Tennessee can do it, if Notre Dame can do alternate uniforms, A&M can too. But I'm not the one that has to make that decision. I'm not the one that has to say, hey, we're doing it, and if people complain, I'll deal with it. And that's what Elko did. It came off perfectly. The stadium looked great. The players loved it. You won the game. Everyone's happy. What did you guys think of the uniforms? I loved it. I love the script A&M. It's just different. Yeah. I thought they were cool. We talked about it last week. You've played in them before where they surprised you with it.
I loved it. I just think that was the energy that we needed for this game.
It was real energy.
Yeah, everyone was excited because it was something different. We're always the A&M were traditional, and that's wonderful, and that's what makes us this great university. But it was fun to make it just a little bit different. People got more excited. There was more energy around it. But the fans bought in, but also the players bought in. They're buying into this program, and every coach always tells me our team has to buy in for us to be successful. And you can tell that this group on the field is fully bought into what Elko's doing. The fans are bought in for that game on Saturday to be wearing black and showing up and making that noise to help us get the win. But I mean, the energy was truly unmatched. That's what you want at Kyle Field. That was an incredible experience.
I think Elko's our kind of guy too.
Yeah.
He's
a guy.
I said that earlier. He fits.
The hard worker. Kind of what A&M stands for is who he is. And it's so in alignment with what this university stands for.
And he's just a very down-to-earth guy, but also a brilliant football mind. And like you said earlier, just understands people. I don't care if it's his bosses like the AD and the president, if it's a big donor in the Board of Regents, if it's
former players,
one of his former players, if it's one of his starting players, if it's a guy way down on the bench and he's trying to keep engaged for that moment he needs to play. He understands that day to day too. And by the way, he also does TikTok dances.
Oh, I know. That was hilarious.
Oh, you got to see that one. It's great.
Recruit.
The new recruit, the new commitment from Georgia.
Oh, the recruits got him doing wild things.
You have to watch it. It's so good.
By the way, that commitment is born out of when he was at Duke. It was through one of the legendary Duke basketball players that was on that staff. There was a relationship that happened then, and the young man and his family loved Coach Elko, and they loved what the program was about. And I think you're going to see more and more of that, which leads me to my last question for you before we go, just wrap up with some college football and whatever else is on our mind. We didn't call this a must-win game, but we knew what you could get by winning this football game, and that made it it's so important. And I think, Sean, it's the biggest win, and they've got to keep it going, right? It always just gets bigger and bigger, right? Yeah. But I think at this point in the season, in those 2 years with Johnny, they didn't win very many big home games. The biggest wins were away, the Cotton Bowl and you're in Alabama. And in the beating Bama when they were number one, Texas A&M was 0-2 in the SEC at the time. They were pretty much out of the race. Beating Oklahoma way back before y'all when they were number one, A&M finished 6-6 that year. They were already out of it. It was a major upset. They brought, speaking of bringing a quarterback off the bench, here's a little trivia. Coach Sumlin, offensive coordinator, called for Reggie McNeil to come off the bench and beat number one OU. But where this is right now and all the stuff we talked about today and what's in store, and this being year one under a coach, I felt like that's the biggest win I've seen A&M get at Kyle Field.
It's definitely one of the bigger ones, man. I can't think of a better one.
2010 Nebraska was big.
But those games, we weren't in the hunt to be like the national champion, right? This year, we're in the hunt to be the national champion. Top 10 team with a 12-team playoff, man. That sounds good to me.
And the SEC is available this year, too. And I know we're looking at the playoff, right? And that is the bigger prize. But, just even playing in the SEC championship game when A&M hasn't won or played in a conference championship game since 1998. Your boy was in school then. That is how long it's been since A&M's even played in one. Yeah, much less won it, and it's there. Like, so there's probably a half dozen teams that could win it this year, maybe even 7. But I don't think you're getting in with 2. So Bama and Ole Miss are probably out, but Texas, A&M, Georgia, or let's start with who's up top. A&M, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, LSU. They could win out. Though there are 5 teams I think that could win it right now. So why not A&M?
It's very interesting because of that spreading of the talent that we talked about last week. All the players are kind of going to everywhere now instead of all being at Alabama and being backup. So we'll see.
What are your storylines around college football as we sit here today that got your attention this weekend?
For me, something that's just kind of keeping my attention all year is that Big 12 West Coast WWF football. But Colorado, man.
I was just going to say that.
What Deion's doing over there at Colorado is just very interesting. He's got Travis Hunter playing both ways. He's got Shadur playing well. He's got the defense finally looking like something. They're getting a couple sacks out there. They got linebackers running through gaps, stuff that I didn't see last year from them. And we all have to remember that Colorado had 1 win 2 seasons ago. And
there's so much hype around
the
them
bottom of the boot of the NCAA.
And when they got beat up by Nebraska like they did, and he's trying to learn how to be himself and then not just go crazy.
Not like rub people too wrong. Yeah. Even though he doesn't care.
He doesn't care, but I think he's starting to figure out that I'm not going to kiss everyone's ass, but if I'm
gotta find
a little more gracious, like it keeps me out of just. But I've been really impressed with what he's getting out of we know how great Shadur and Travis Hunter are, right? But what he's getting out of the rest of that team. That's right. But that Big 12's fun. I mean, BYU, Iowa State. And the crazy thing, though, Sean, and this is where it's going to get wild, these teams don't play each other. If you look at their schedules, Colorado don't play either one of them. Iowa State and BYU don't play. K-State's in there and could mess it up, and they've already beaten Colorado. But, those 3 teams don't play each other. You go look in the ACC. Okay, we're not worried about Pitt, right? Well, Pitt, they do play Clemson, but they don't play Miami. Miami, I don't think, plays either one of them. So in these instances, like the Big Ten, Penn State, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio State, they don't all play each other. There's only 2 spots in these title games. The playoff committee is going to have a really hard time if these teams don't start getting knocked off because, you're going to have 1-loss teams from these other conferences versus 2-loss teams from the SEC. What if there's a 3-loss team from the SEC because they had to play in the title game? But they went 10-2 in the SEC and lost to Georgia in the title game.
The schedules are so different.
I think this playoff selection committee is going to have the hardest time ever, and I'm fascinated. A&M, I would love to see the Aggies win this week for a lot of reasons, but one, I would be really interested to see if they went and won at South Carolina, and they're sitting at 8-1 with 2 top 10 wins, and their loss coming to a top 10 team. Where will they be? I think they'll be ranked multiple spots higher than what they are in the polls right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think you could see A&M coming in at number 6.
Right.
It'll be interesting. Hope,
Bella, what else you see around college football?
Do what?
What else do you see around college football?
A lot of Heisman talk, I think, which has been interesting. Like you bring up Colorado, Travis Hunter. I mean, he's obviously up there for that. But then the quarterback battle, too, has been interesting. I mean, that's always fun to see the best of the best kind of battling it out for that spot. That to me has been interesting. I thought the Vanderbilt-Texas game was a little bit eye-opening how close it was. I thought Texas would end up beating them by, way larger points.
I did too.
That was shocking to me.
Texas, they're looking more and more like
mortal.
Yeah, they're looking more and more beatable every week takes closer to that game.
Well, Vandy gave their O-line hell.
Yeah,
that's not when you're thinking
about
we're
going to give them hell.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you're thinking about beating A&M later in the year, that ain't a good sign. Georgia gave them more than hell.
And I think that's
Georgia pulled them into hell for 60 minutes, spit them out, and I did talk to some people around that know what's going on over, not just down there, and they're real honest. Like, hey, Georgia beat them up, and they messed them up.
They're big boys,
physically and mentally.
Yep.
It messed them up.
Yeah.
And you've played in this league, you know how it is. Like, if you get any hit in the schedule, like it's all I've tried to say for 12 years to people in Norman and Austin, and they thought it was just me. They want it to be about A&M because it's me saying it. And it's like, oh, what's A&M done? Well, first of all, the Aggies have like the 4th best record in this conference since they joined. Okay, that's number one. They're not 8th or 9th or 10th. They're 4th. They're ahead of like Florida. It's like Bama, Georgia, LSU, A&M. They're ahead of like Florida, Tennessee. Second, I wasn't talking about A&M. I'm talking about all 15 teams besides Alabama up until now. You get beat up. You never know when it's going to hit a team's psyche. You never know when physically
it's real.
They're going to be beat up more than you know, and you go into Vandy and go, why do we look slow? Why is Sean Porter playing bad? Well, because he's tough. He's playing through an injury. He's got a bruised quad. And there's...
I got an example for that, too. Like, our very first... our first game of the season, my senior year, we were in the SEC. We went up and played Louisiana Tech. La Tech first, right?
No, I wish.
No, we played La Tech first. We just didn't play them at home. We played them away.
You see, you're caught in the weirdest what if in A&M history.
Wasn't it?
That game got canceled because of the hurricane that never
we
even
Florida,
hit there.
And then we played them after?
And so the theory is, like, if you get one warm-up, tune-up game before you play Florida, could you have beaten Florida, like Johnny with one game under his belt? So, yeah, y'all opened up at Kyle Field with Florida.
But what I was going to say, in that very first SEC game against Florida, I cracked a rib.
Oh, really?
A rib in the first game. And I had to wear like a hard protective shield over my rib for the rest of the season.
Oh, really?
But it's like, you're talking about playing through injuries and getting, nicked up against in these SEC games. My very first game, I cracked my rib.
Yeah.
And I had to play my whole senior season like that.
Wow, yeah. And then by midseason, you've got a dozen guys like that.
Right. By midseason, everybody's banged up. So that's life in football.
And then fans watch it and they think, well, why is he not playing like he did the other week? And like, they don't even know that you're like playing with a, broken rib or whatever. So, I mean, there's so many elements that go into it too that fans just have no idea when it comes to teams.
Yeah.
But I think Texas mentally has been shaken and you can see it. I mean, think about, no one thought Alabama would lose to Vanderbilt. That was just, now they don't seem mortal either. It's like, we can take them. They're not that big, bad bully on the block. When people had Alabama on the schedule, you were just terrified to see them. Now it's like, okay, like, yeah, they're good, but they're beatable.
Well, you look at LSU and they beat Ole Miss. They roll into Fayetteville, kick the crap out of Arkansas. They come into Kyle Field. You're up 17-7 at halftime.
I think it's
17-7 midway through the third quarter. And like, we're going to play Georgia for the SEC title and be in the playoff. We don't have to play Georgia. We don't have to play Texas. We don't have to play Tennessee. In comes Marcel Reed. Can't tackle him. Game over. You got a whole bye week to have to stew on it. Then you got Bama coming in. If Bama comes in and beats them,
I think Bama beats them.
Their season's over. And they're at 3 losses with losable games still to go. So it is a crazy way it swings in this league. I'll tell you my story that's got my attention is what's going on in the Big Ten. The 2 teams that you tip your hat to and give a lot of credit to right now are Pitt, former A&M commitment at quarterback, Eli Holstein and Pat Narduzzi's doing a great job there. In Indiana.
Indiana's
Signetti.
Yeah, they're playing. They're playing some ball up in Indiana.
To me, he and Elko and Narduzzi are like the 3 guys that you would
and
put in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
Matt Rule's good too.
Matt Rule is
I wouldn't
good.
say coach of the year good.
No,
He's
because
a-
they've lost too many games.
He's
but
a program-changing type
Yeah.
of coach. He's similar to all those guys you
Yeah,
just named.
I think he'll ultimately get it done there at Nebraska. They had a chance to really make. If they'd have beaten Ohio State and they were that close, they could go to 6-2, big time statement win. But now they're sitting at 5-3, and I don't know what their schedule looks like. But what the dude in Indiana's doing is a lot like Elko. Just it's different because it's Indiana. It's a basketball school, but just changing a culture overnight. It's a lot like what Elko did at Duke,
Right.
if you really think about it. But right now, to me, that's the storyline. And then what I'm looking forward to most this week, outside of what goes on in Columbia, is what's taking place in Happy Valley. My man James Franklin playing host to Ohio State. I mean, you talk about a massive
It's
game.
huge.
Ohio State's still well coached, still a good team, still got great
So much
players over
talent.
there. They got the best freshman receiver I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he's ridiculous.
Um,
Which the last one they had looked like they just
They loaded it like
Always
like
like
how
that.
Alabama was when they went on that run with Julio and all those guys
Yeah.
for a while. But this guy's different. This JJ
Yeah.
Smith is different. I do want to say that. But yeah, they're still a well coached team, still a great team, still a dangerous team on your schedule, I would say.
we're
I think they win.
I'm doing spoiler alert. Because you're wearing Ohio State's
I am.
colors.
Yeah, I'm repping on my
You
guys.
are.
I'm going to go with Penn State at home. And they are at home, right? Okay.
Who do you got, Bella?
I'm going Ohio State. I mean, I'm in red.
Yeah.
No, but really, I think they got that.
I got Ohio State with the upset
All right.
in that streak, and I've been pretty good on my picks this season, Luch.
I have two, believe it or not. It's the first year in like 3 years that I've been good on our actual
Right.
picks against the spread on Friday. We should have had you do that with us this year, the pick six.
Oh,
We do
yeah, that'd be
6 a
good.
week against the spread. None of us are that good.
I'm good. I can
So
do that.
far, I've been the best this year. All right, I guess that'll do it. Thank you for coming up,
Thanks
Bella.
for having me.
Sean, as always, this is a LiucciCast, and then we've got a little defense and review. Call it a week.